Well guys, it's been a few decades in the making, but I think we can finally say that William Gibson's unproduced Alien 3 screenplay is no longer unproduced. Dark Horse Comics released its 5-issue comic book adaptation, which recently ended its run, and now we have seen the release of the Audible Audio Drama production, also based on the screenplay. The huge appeal with this production is that Michael Biehn and Lance Henriksen have lent their voices to bring in the return of Aliens characters Hicks and Bishop.
Outstanding.
Magnificent, isn't it?
Gibson's take on a post-Alien story, of course much different than the film that ultimately became Alien 3, was long admired by fans, and it always begged the question, what if? I've often wondered what it may have been like if Gibson's story became Alien 3, and with the release of the comic and of the audio drama, I think we can get a pretty effective idea of the Alien 3 that never was. Today I wanted to talk about the audio drama for the most part, and give a review and what I thought of it, and I guess of William Gibson's Alien 3 as a whole. This review will be light on spoilers, but I will be getting into some general plot and character points, and also I'll be talking about this story's take on the xenomorph and its life cycle. So if you'd want to go in completely fresh, I can give you a 10-second spoiler-free review. It's great, very easy recommendation from me. Whether you're a fan of the Gibson screenplay or not familiar with it at all, and just an Alien fan in general, I think you're going to enjoy it. Definitely check it out, but there will be some spoilers moving forward.
But stay frosty and alert.
The general pitch of Alien 3 is that it's an alien movie starring Hicks and Bishop from Aliens, where in the aftermath of the previous film they find themselves having to prevent an alien outbreak and a nuclear war at the same time. Ripley is only minimally involved, having been put into a coma for pretty much the entirety of the movie. Newt's around too, but not a big part of it either. About a third of the way through she leaves to be taken care of by her grandparents on Earth. So, for all intents and purposes, this is the Hicks and Bishop movie. Gibson's screenplay is from 1987, right off the success of Aliens being released the previous year, and if Fox wanted to get a sequel into production ASAP, this was the one they were going to go with. The appeal of such a story, at least continuity-wise, is that, at the time, Sigourney Weaver had no interest in doing a third film. This story for a third installment would have passed the torch from Ripley to Hicks and Bishop, or at least kept Ripley on the back burner in case Weaver decided she was all in for Alien 4. For the purposes of Gibson's story, I'm sure they could have offered her an exuberant amount of money for a very small role, or even recast the role. And I'm sure they'd have to recast Newt too, as Carrie Henn would already be noticeably older, and if she was in cryosleep between movies, technically she wouldn't have aged at all, so we have minimally involved, possibly recast Ripley and Newt, but thankfully their characters are treated respectfully, even if ultimately discarded. And most importantly, with this version of Alien 3, we would see the return of Michael Biehn as Corporal Hicks and Lance Henriksen as the android Bishop. Their work in Aliens is incredible, and to this day they're seen as two of the franchise's best characters and loved by fans all over the world. With Ripley's character arc arguably resolved over the previous two movies, confronting her demons, facing the alien once more, and redeeming herself as a surrogate mother for Newt, the natural successors to the story would be the other survivors. These are characters worth exploring, and these are actors I think audiences would have wanted to see more of in the series in those specific roles. Having to recast Ripley and Newt wouldn't be too bad of a trade-off in order to follow these characters for Alien 3. In fact, that's actually exactly what they do for the purposes of this audio drama. Biehn and Henriksen, of course, have returned to lend their voices to the production, but you're going to notice right away that Ripley and Newt have different voice actors, as the audio drama opens with a recap of Aliens, flashing back to the events of the end of the film. These are recreations of the scenes, with Biehn as Hicks and Henriksen as Bishop, and with Laura Lefkow, who did excellent work in previous audio dramas, such as Alien Out of the Shadows and Alien River of Pain, voicing Ripley. Mayre Doherty, who voiced Newt in River of Pain, returns to the role here as well. Even Lorelei King, voice of Mother in the previous audio dramas, and Alien Covenant, returns. So there's already some continuity working within these audio dramas as a whole, and that's appreciated. This introduction to the story with the recap of Aliens is an element unique to the Alien 3 audio drama alone, as it was not part of the screenplay or the comic. It was a great addition, and one of the highlights of this production actually, and I think was very effective in bringing the listener up to speed and keeping the end of Aliens fresh in your mind as the events transition into this new story. The narration is from Lance Henriksen, stepping back into the Bishop role, and this recap is given to us from Bishop's point of view. It's beautifully written and delivered, not at all what you may expect from an android recalling a sequence of events. It feels like a lot more than just a report of events as dictated by a robot.
I prefer the term artificial person myself.
Bishop's recap is a little more flowery in the language, almost poetic, suggesting the events of Aliens and of Alien 3 have caused Bishop to gradually gain a kind of humanity. It's very fitting since Bishop's humanity, or at least his devotion to it, is a theme explored in this story. Bishop's point of view is especially helpful as he guides us into the events of the introductory scenes of Alien 3. The big reveal in the opening is that Bishop had been implanted with the Alien Queen's final egg when she attacked him on the Sulaco, and its makings had grown inside and outside of him while in stasis. It's a compelling visual, one that quickly became synonymous with this story, a big part of the comic version's promotion for sure, but obviously in an audio drama, it's more about telling than showing. So I thought the Bishop narration was a great tool to help the story. Though this is used very sparingly, the narration only returns once more to establish other story points later on. It's done well and probably a better device for this story than what was used in Alien River of Pain, which has an authoritative, military-sounding voiceover informing us of the date, time, and location with each scene break, which may have been a little too intrusive here. There's a lot of jumping between locations and characters, a lot of cogs in the machine of Gibson's Alien 3, but the listener is trusted to catch up as the story moves along. Mainly, the locations switch from Rodina Station, under the operation of the Union of Progressive Peoples, the UPP, and Anchor Point Station, owned by WEYLAND-YUTANI. Basically, they kind of go by the old spy movie method. At Anchor Point, you'll hear mostly American accents, while at Rodina, you'll hear every other kind of accent. A large part of the story is the conflict between the UPP and Anchor Point. Gibson's MO isn't really to establish this wide set of beliefs by the UPP and broadly feed us their politics. It doesn't get too Star Trek-y in that respect. But the focus is on the specific conflict at hand. After LV-426, the Sulaco entered into UPP territory, and there's questions regarding the rights of the cargo, the true intent of the ship's mission, and violations of fragile treaties that leave all parties involved with itchy trigger fingers. Tensions and threats of retaliation between the opposing forces loom over them as they each continue to learn more about the xenomorph organism, each working with a different half of Bishop retrieved from the Sulaco. The UPP quickly learns, but perhaps too late, that even the mere knowledge of the xenomorph is extremely dangerous, as each side's specimen procurement feels like an arms race with the alien as this dangerous, unpredictable weapon of mass destruction that cannot be contained. WEYLAND-YUTANI can't be swayed by threats or the inconvenience of debatable treaty violations, however, and for all intents and purposes, their mission to LV-426 was a successful one, and they have successfully collected their specimens. It's great to have returning characters, and I think the overall premise of the Rodina and Anchor Point conflict is interesting, but the main attraction of any Alien story is the alien and what they do with it. Gibson's Alien 3 sees the xenomorph more as a biological weapon than ever before previously, exploring ideas that are even a little bit, dare I say, Promethean. We get the tried-and-true elements of the alien life cycle, the egg, the facehugger, chestburster, but we also get a different angle on the creature that keeps it unpredictable and even more of a threat than previously believed. Scientists on Anchor Point use samples taken from the Sulaco to clone xenomorph DNA, but of course these experiments go terribly wrong, and exposure to these samples can infect the human host with a unique form of the alien.
It must be something we haven't seen yet.
Not too unlike the pathogen in Prometheus, the host's DNA mutates rapidly. A bloody, violent, painful death ensues, and in this instance, the fully grown alien rips out of the host's body like it was a shell. This alien, simply referred to as the hybrid, is very xenomorph-like, and it is highly infectious itself, able to contaminate a host with a bite or piercing of its tail, leading them to suffer the same fate as the original host. The sound design of the audio drama is absolutely superb, and really conveys how big and threatening this creature is, though obviously we're at a disadvantage not being able to actually see it. That's when it becomes very useful to have the comic lying around for visual aid. Here it appears very close to the original alien design, but it has the domeless appearance, reminiscent of some of the behind-the-scenes images from the film's first creature, save for the addition of two beady little red eyes attached to this design. I can't help but wonder how they could have pulled it off in a movie, especially if it would have been made in the late 80s or early 90s. No doubt Studio 80i would have done the work for the film, and I bet they would have come up with something really cool, especially with how it would have burst out of its host. If it matched anywhere close to the art by Johnny Christmas in the comic, it would have been pretty amazing to see. The bulbous, throbbing skull, the tooth falling out, the long arms ripping out and extending in a whirlwind of blood, the remnants of skin and hair still stuck to the alien's head. It would have been disgusting and horrifying, possibly even matching the effect of the chestburster from the original, but We'll never know for sure. Alien 3 has many unique elements, but inevitably and by sheer necessity, it all amounts to our heroes having to stand their ground and to work to destroy the aliens, at any cost. Though with Gibson's story, there are plenty of hindrances and little twists along the way that keep it intriguing. Bishop is eventually reassembled and brought to Anchor Point, and we're sort of meant to be a little suspicious of him and wonder if maybe he's been compromised in some way. He's even assigned to work with the alien specimens because of his newfound expertise from Ripley's report and everything discovered on Hadley's Hope. So briefly, we're a little wary of Bishop all over again, but thankfully this doesn't last too long and we're not jerked around in any way. Bishop already earned our trust through the previous film as Ripley learned to trust him despite both her and our suspicions as the audience after the horrible experiences with Ash, the murderous android from Alien 1. Reverting to that would have been unfair to the character, I think, so it gives us just enough to raise an eyebrow before Bishop's actual motives become abundantly clear. He knows the alien organism is a threat to all human life, so he's bound by his programming to preserve human life.
It is impossible for me to harm or by mission of action allow to be harmed a human being.
While in Aliens, his mission is pretty clear-cut, to bring in the dropship by remote and evacuate the survivors. In Alien 3, we enter more of a gray area. Thrown into the conflict is a transport vessel, the Kansas City, that could be salvation for Anchor Point survivors, but could also be a breeding ground for new hosts, with about 300 souls on board. Bishop is confronted with an Asimovian dilemma. If he helps blow the station's fusion plant, he kills all the survivors on Anchor Point, but if he tries to get them to safety aboard the Kansas City, he risks contamination and possible further and more significant loss of human life. So what does he do? Without hesitation, he opts to move forward with destroying Anchor Point and all the specimens and surviving humans on board. He rationalizes this by saying, "I'm taking the longer view," which I think is a pretty good line, and great to hear it delivered by Lance Henriksen in the scene. Bishop gets to grow a little bit as a character, but nothing all too extreme. He stays very consistent with the Bishop we know, so we can forgive Alien 3 if, when it comes to the action of the story, Bishop ends up treading some familiar territory. Much like in Aliens, the main action falls upon the group of human survivors, while Bishop once again goes off on a little side mission, accomplishing a task that only an artificial person could do.
Right, man. Bishop should go. Good idea.
It's not like it's not done well, and it's not like it doesn't fit into the story. It does, and it makes sense within the story, but it just feels a little familiar. All things considered, though, I think Bishop may be the best-handled returning character. There's not too much with Newt and Ripley, though they work as an extension of Hicks's character, who is also serviced well here. I think Gibson's story respects the foundation set up with the character while still going in his own direction. James Cameron very delicately put forth this family unit concept with Hicks, Ripley, and Newt. Throughout the movie, we notice an attraction between Hicks and Ripley, some kind of relationship is developing with the two, but also there are moments of Hicks in a protective, paternal role towards Newt, though obviously not as focused as Ripley's relationship with her, but it's all there. Cameron even often refers to the moment where the three are holding each other in the med lab after the facehugger attack as the family scene. For the most part of Alien 3, Hicks is all business. He's still in Marine mode, still shook from the experience, and sure as hell wants to get rid of all the bugs on Anchor Point Station. Having scenes with Ripley, and Newt particularly, shows more of a tender side to Hicks, and his involvement with the character shows us exactly where his priorities are at. Hicks eventually goes gung-ho and ready to kill some aliens, but only after he is absolutely positive Ripley and Newt are safe and far away. His primary goal in this first half of the story is to protect his would-be family.
Doesn't mean we're engaged or anything.
When you think about it, the characters could have easily been shuffled off in the first 5 minutes, flown away, and we'd be told they're fine, and it wouldn't make too much of a difference because they're not involved in any of the main action of the plot. But instead, Newt is around for a good third of the movie, and Ripley just about halfway through. Events unfold slowly, and as Hicks realizes something's not quite right, he follows his own instincts and his own sense of duty. He's working to maintain that little family that he salvaged from the horrors of his mission. That wouldn't be something he'd do carelessly, so this process is followed through in a way that takes its time, and in a way that's true to the character, and I think the way he's portrayed here is further evidence that the series would have been in very capable hands if Hicks became the focus character and star of the series. Michael Biehn has always been a healthy alternative to the action stars of the 80s, with a lot of the big ones aiming for practically invincible, muscle-bound macho men who spout out one-liners. Hicks can kick plenty of ass, but also has a sensitivity to him, which is refreshing. Plus, he's not empty on the one-liners either, so Hicks has the whole package.
I'd like to keep this handy for close encounters.
Michael Biehn's return to the character for the audio drama is pretty glorious, and his performance is indicative of a devotion to this fan favorite, and an understanding of this character and commitment to it even after all these years. Much like how you could picture the awesome alien effects, you can absolutely envision Biehn fully back into the Hicks role. You can feel his intense protectiveness of Newt in his scenes with her, and in other moments, such as when he's introduced to a nifty new weapon, you can practically see him grinning at the prospect of tearing down the alien monsters with it. Biehn did a great job, and the return of Hicks is, of course, a highlight. There are other characters in Alien 3 besides our returning heroes. They range from having integral moments in the plot to just plain alien fodder, but there are plenty of standouts. A personal favorite of mine is Spence, one of the scientists on Anchor Point, voiced by Samantha Coughlin in the audio drama. She's not a take-charge, beat-em-up badass or anything like that, but she does have a conscience, and maybe that's enough. And she does play an important role in organizing the group to destroy the specimens. She also has some pretty good scenes with Newt, which, by the way, they do briefly discuss whether or not this little girl may be traumatized or not, but she actually seems pretty fine, so for the purposes of this story, Newt has come out of the experience on LV-426 without any major psychological repercussions. Commander Chang, played by Rebecca Yao, also brings a lot to the roster of new characters in this story. Chang is essentially the figurehead of the UPP. She's arguably the main character of that portion of the plot and all the action occurring on the Redina. She has her own story going on that eventually crosses into the events on Anchor Point. I also really enjoyed the no-nonsense Jackson, played by Siri Steinmo, the bubbly-voiced botanist, Halliday, played by Sarah Petard, and Barbara Barnes and Keith Wickman are excellent playing the sleazy company reps Wells and Fox. On the whole, the entire cast does great work here, and the director, Dirk Maggs, who has worked previously on the Alien audio dramas and many other productions, brings us yet another production that I think is very special. When it comes to any qualms or criticisms I have regarding the Audible audio drama itself, they're pretty minimal. The voice acting and sound design is on point, though maybe it could have used a little bit more in terms of musical score. I noticed some recycling from previous audio dramas, and if any of these productions could have used its own distinct musical accompaniment, it would be this one. I think they also could have found a way to transition into the location changes a little more seamlessly aside from the scarcely used Bishop narration, but that's not too big of an issue. You may also notice Biehn and Henriksen sound about 30 years older, which may distract from connecting Aliens and Alien 3 a little bit, but this isn't a movie sequel from 1987, it's an audio drama from 2019. They're 30 years older. And honestly, if you find it distracting, it will probably only be at first. Once the drama unfolds and sucks you in, it's pretty much a non-issue. Perhaps the biggest detriment to the audio drama is the fact that, as an audio drama, it's limited by its own medium and can't really show you the awesome visuals that beg for representation. Unfortunately, a lot of it amounts to characters having to describe things, which, to the audio drama's credit, it does so in the best possible way, and doesn't go overboard to the point of being humorous. Characters aren't describing things in excruciating detail or anything like that. They're giving us the key points, and it never drags the pace of the story or its tone down in any way. But once more, this is where the Dark Horse comic becomes an extremely effective supplement. The great thing about audio dramas and podcasts and all things like that in general is that they offer the flexibility to enjoy them in the way that best suits you. You can listen to them on the way to work or at the gym, doing stuff around the house, whatever the case may be, but for the optimum Alien 3 audio drama experience, I would highly recommend picking up the comics and reading along as you listen.
It's the only way to be sure.
They don't sync perfectly, but they're actually pretty close, and it really helps the experience. Me personally, I played it on the Audible app and airdropped it to the TV so I can connect it to the sound system, got out the iPad and opened up the digital copies of the comics and went through them as I relaxed on the couch and listened. It was great, but whatever works best for you. You can do something like that, but nothing beats having a physical comic in your hand. So you can do that and do the tried and true under the covers with the headphones and a flashlight thing, make it extra scary, or however you want to do it. But the point is, I think combining the comic with the audio drama makes it for being all the more of an immersive experience, and with your imagination filling in the rest, it really does feel like you're watching this entirely new, alternate reality set film unfold. That's really how it feels. It's almost as if we have this alternate movie between 2 and 3 now being more closely realized than ever before after the long-fabled script phase. now adapted into the comic and the audio drama with all the best writers and artists and editors and directors and voice actors behind each, and examples of the best storytelling their respective mediums have to offer. At long last, William Gibson's Alien 3 is legitimized. It's a thrill for longtime fans of the screenplay, and for new fans who are just discovering it. I'd consider myself a fan of Gibson's Alien 3. I really love it, especially going over it again in these different available forms and getting a better idea of the movie that could have been. And I guess the burning question after all of this is, did they go with the wrong Alien 3? Should they have went with this instead of what became the 1992 movie directed by David Fincher? Well, I guess it's up for the individual to determine that. I know some people absolutely hate Alien 3.
Fuck Alien 3!
But to be fair, it has its fans too, and there's a lot of good things about the movie, so I'm not going to start dumping all over it. The purpose of Gibson's Alien 3's resurgence isn't to open up the old wounds, but to re-examine this story that was lost to development hell and come back and bring it into further realization. In that respect, Dark Horse and Audible were hugely successful. And yeah, it would have made a good movie, everything else being equal. It would have been a very different direction too, that's undeniable. But it's not quite as simple as this being an absolutely perfect sequel that Fox was crazy not to make. No, it's far from perfect. While it has a really good premise and some complex dilemmas, it's still not immune to the same monster movie cliches as any other monster movie. We'll have scenes of a character wandering off and getting killed by the xenomorph that I suspect would have felt pretty standard and predictable at the time, as it does today. And sure, it's a huge plus that none of our returning characters are unceremoniously smushed by a ship crash, but ideally, concept-wise, if I'm wishing for things, I would have liked to see a movie that had an equal focus on all 4 characters from Aliens. Ripley and Newt don't do much of anything, which is all well and good and helpful for the characterization of Hicks, but they start to feel like dead weight until they're finally written out, with a wing and a prayer not knowing if we'll ever see them again anyway. It feels episodic, and as mentioned earlier, hits similar character beats that we've already seen before, and the ending could have used a little bit more. But keep in mind this is meant to be part 3 in what would have been a long-running series, continuing to see the adventures of Hicks and Bishop as they stop the aliens. This isn't so much a spoiler because they don't really go into too much detail, but there is a strong suggestion at the end of Gibson's Alien 3 that the 4th film would have been their journey to the xenomorph homeworld. So this story, though self-contained enough, was not meant to be the concluding chapter of a trilogy, but a further entry in a larger series, doing some quality sequel baiting for 1987. Maybe they even would have followed with the first Aliens comics, which started being released about 2 years after the screenplay. Who knows? You know I'm a huge fan of those comics and the Earth War storyline, so if they got anywhere close to that kind of story, it would have been pretty amazing. With the comic and the audio drama of Alien 3, we get a precious glimpse into what could have been, and for that I'm thankful. I love the comic, I love the audio drama, and I can't help but get a little nostalgic for the Aliens characters that didn't get their fair shake. And in listening to the return of Biehn and Henriksen in their roles for the audio drama, it just makes me want that Blomkamp Alien 5 even more. Call me a fanboy if you want, but we were just so close to getting it, and that's maddening. Is it really by the wayside now? Is it really going to be another Alien story that falls into the category of what could have been? I hope not. I'd still love to see it, but maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm just crazy, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on the audio drama. If you've given it a listen or checked out the comic, please comment below and share your thoughts, and let me know if you're also still down to see Alien 5 get made. I can't be alone. As always, I'd like to thank you very much for watching today. I really appreciate it. And if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to give it a like, and you can also subscribe for all the latest videos from the channel. A very, very special thanks goes out to WEYLAND YUTANI executives EmYarUk and Lady Anne, part of the Patreon Hive. If you'd like to join the Hive and support the channel, check out my Patreon page for exclusive posts and contests. In the meantime, you can catch up with Alien Theory over social media. Follow @alien_theory on Twitter and @alientheoryyt on Facebook and Instagram for more. And until next time, this is Alien Theory, signing off.